Coming up on episode 108 of the Behind the Back podcast, we finally come back after a nice 2-week break here. We have a lot to talk about. Philadelphia Eagles going on a bye week. I give my grade for the halfway point of the season now that we're on the bye week. Who's been the MVP so far? It feels like a pretty obvious choice, but I talk about that, give some final notes for the Eagles before we move on to San Francisco and talk about their upcoming game against the battered New York Giants team. Suffered a really tough loss against the Eagles. The Niners have been going through even more injuries, it seems like, and Ben breaks down his keys to the game, what he's looking forward to, what he needs to see from this Niners team this week. And then we pivot on to the Sacramento Kings. We have a real deep conversation. Guys, we've been gone the first couple weeks. It's been a while, and a lot of things have happened. A Russell Westbrook edition, a Keegan Murray contract. We talk about how we felt post Russell Westbrook edition and how the first 5 games have disappointingly gone. So we kind of just break down how we feel about the Kings and what we expect out of this Kings team entering another very rough stretch in November. With that being said, guys, let's get it. All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Behind the Back podcast. We are your hosts. I am Marcos Conan-Negron, and beside me here, as always, is Ben, the Jet. Rhett, Ben, it's been a couple weeks. Good to have you back, brother. How have you been? How was your trip? Did you have a good time?
Trip was exhausting, but it was a good time. It was a business trip, but I definitely missed the studio. I missed talking sports, so I am happy to be back.
Yes, sir. That's awesome. And I am happy to be back as well. It's been good. Got to see some family recently. So shout out to my family. I love you guys so much. I'm glad I got to see all you guys. Big news going on over there. So like we mentioned in the intro, we got a lot of fun stuff to talk about. It's good to be back. We're talking about all of our teams for once. And it's good because there's a lot of crazy things going on. But we're going to start in football. We're going to keep it mellow to start because we're going on talk about the team on the bye week. The Philadelphia Eagles going into the bye week. 6-2. You know what? That's exactly what I was hoping for. If you had told me before the season that the Eagles were going to be 6-2, no major injuries, no season enders to your main guys, pretty much intact, and you're going into the bye week 6-2. You figured out a lot of things on your offense and you're trending in the right direction. I would have signed up for that any day. Before I kind of do my little spiel on it, do you think the Eagles are, was 6-2 where you were expecting them? Were you expecting them to look kind of how they've looked so far in the season? What was your early takeaway?
6-2 is where I expected them to be when the season started, but how this season kind of started, if you asked me that question, after week 3 or 4, I would probably tell you I would chalk up at least one more loss. So considering all the controversy that's been surrounding this team, I mean, media created, right? Because that's where a lot of it comes from. But a lot of the questions about the offense, a lot of the questions about even, if their defense is capable, considering the people they've lost, the players they lost over this offseason, 6-2 is a big W.
Yeah, I think so too. I think, the Eagles are great for content. They give us something to talk about every week. Then it's really dramatic when in reality they are just a good team. And they've spent, I went back and listened to what my grade was for the first quarter of the season. I gave them a C+. So if I were to give them a grade now, 4 weeks later, we're 2-2 in those last 4 weeks. But I think the growth that we made was really important. And that's what I said last time. I was like, yeah, it's great that we're eking out these super close games against good teams and kind of getting a little lucky here. But, we need to show that we can be that contender again. And it took a couple losses. And even in those losses, we looked, there was flashes of what I was asking for. And then these past 2 wins have been about as good feeling as you could have gotten as an Eagles fan, with Hurts getting a perfect passer rating against the Vikings and then following that up with 4 touchdowns here in New York, and we just smashed them. Obviously, sad game for Giants fans out there with the Scatterboo injury, but it was for the Eagles 2 straight games that they really needed to have going into this bye week, because now coming out of the bye week, we get the Packers, the Lions, the Chargers, like a lot of games for me narratively that I've been really excited for. So I think that, if I'm giving a grade for these past four that the Eagles have had, they've dealt with some injuries too. To some key guys. They didn't have AJ last game either, or Cam Jurgens. So yet the offense looked really efficient. The defense is getting guys back. We got Nakobe back, and he's made a difference. So I think I'm giving them now, I would say a B. I think they've been really, really solid, shown flashes, but they're not complete yet. And that's good. We're gonna peak at the right time. And I think these next few weeks, the Eagles coming, last year they made a whole identity shift coming out of the bye. But I think the Eagles were still searching for it this year, and now they kind of know what to lean into and what they can really work on this week off. So I'm really excited to see what we look like when we come back. But I would give us a B for these now up until the midseason point, because we've shown growth. We're not perfect, but we can see what we're going to be, especially once we get some guys back.
So from a team perspective, they're finding a rhythm. Things are starting to look better. Quarterback has started figuring things out, right? That offense in general has started figuring some things out and answering its own questions that it kind of caused or brought up through the bye and essentially through the first half of the season. Who is your MVP?
There's a few guys we could have thrown in here, but I think it is. I think if you asked anybody, I think they would say Jalen. I think Jalen has been the MVP so far. I think, through the first 4 weeks, he just did what he had to do to win games. The team did. But the last 4 weeks, this passing attack and Jalen have been asked to do more by everybody, and they have delivered in a really big way. Now, they haven't been consistent. He hasn't been consistent. At least it feels like the team hasn't been consistent, but one thing that he has been consistent on is, despite the added pressure, he's still not turning the ball over. Now, on the numbers, on the stats, he only has 2 total turnovers, right? 1 fumble, 1 interception. Probably could have had 3 or 4 more interceptions. Should have had a fumble last week on that, tush push that got, stopped. So, but those don't count. The what if stats don't count. It's the ones that he does have, and he's the first QB in NFL history with 20 touchdowns, 15 of them being passing, 5 of them being rushing, while throwing for completing 70% of his passes, and only 1 interception. So the last quarterback to at least have the 15 touchdowns and the 70% with the 1 interception, ironically enough, was Drew Brees, the guy who's been loving to talk about the Eagles in the most positive way, because he has a lot of fun watching them. So I think it's just funny that you get a guy who's been efficient, getting and playing some of his best ball. I think he's really turned a corner too. Hurts hasn't been running as much either. He really just has been slinging it, gripping it and ripping it, play action, under center stuff. That's what the Eagles have been leaning towards, and it provides a lot more variety that I think everyone's been asking for. So you get excited about what Jalen could end up, doing the second half of the season. I just think so far, especially with all the chaos his own receivers love to cause, and the media around him, around his coach, around, him and his OC, he shouldered the load during those losses and said, put the blame on me. I got to be better. And he responds with 2 of the best games of his regular season career. So I just think that it's hard not to pick anyone else but Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I think the response to everything from his side of things has been top notch. I mean, this is a guy who, no matter how many games he wins, no matter what kind of stats he puts up, it's always going to be because of the team around him. And I can relate to that because of Brock Purdy. I can relate to that because I've seen that firsthand. It's from Jalen's perspective, for him to just go out there with all these questions on a week-to-week basis and just play his consistent game and be that calm, composed dude that he just he is, that leadership is rare and hard to find. And I think taking him as your MVP, even just from a leadership standpoint, from what he provides to that team, is totally acceptable.
No, that's great. I'm glad you said that. I think, when we talk about, just some now, going into the bye week, we're not going to go super deep in the Eagles. This is a bye week, right? We're going to get a little break, but just some like housekeeping notes. You know, there's been no shortage since the last time we've talked on this podcast. There has been no shortage of AJ Brown nonsense coming from him, just about his role on the team and what he wants to do, and he's been honest about it. But I think, then you get the reality of like, oh man, the Eagles just cooked against a bad Giants defense, but they cooked without AJ Brown. And they had a really good game with AJ Brown where he had 4 catches and 2 touchdowns and over 100 yards. And after that game, he was like, they're using me, but they're not using me. And we're like, dude, like, we get that you want to be great and you are great. But like, you have a great team, and if you do your part, you're going to get 100 yards a game. We've shown that happens. So it's just like, you don't need to draw this added attention. You just went out there and did your job, and that's what got you here in the first place. Like, I get it, dude. And I get it. But like, because it's hard, because the Eagles look at their best because they had that awesome game from Jalen where he threw for over 300 yards. But then this week against the Giants, they rushed for 260 as a team. So, and Jalen can only get so many yards when your offense does that. But the Eagles look even scarier when they can do both. So it's like, it's a tough world to be in for AJ Brown, but he's one of the most efficient receivers since his time of being there in terms of like the percentage, like his target share relative to the guys around the league. Like, yeah, he doesn't get as many targets, but what he does with with those targets is more efficient than a lot of those top guys that you see. So that's just what makes AJ special, is he does so much with the reps that he gets, even if he could be getting, more. But you're starting to get to a point now where if like, dude, if you're going to make this an every freaking week topic and voice your displeasure, like, okay, we got our Super Bowl. We can get pieces through you. Maybe we lose that trade in terms of like just pure value, kind of like the Cowboys with Micah, but they got 4 picks out of it, right? So that's, if we can get like, I would say if I'm trading AJ Brown, I wouldn't settle for anything less than like 3 first-round picks, just because he's awesome and in his prime. But I know realistically that he probably would go for like 2 first rounds and another, conditional pick and like a really good player or something like that. But that would just be a hard thing for Howie to justify right now. So I don't see that this season. So if that's the case, if I'm the Eagles, bye week, the trade deadline is going to pass after our bye week. If he's still here, I'm telling him like, hey, dude, you're here the rest of the year. Can we just like stop the bull crap and just focus on winning? And then if you really want to dip, we can maybe try and work something out after we win this next Super Bowl. Like, let's see if you're really unhappy, And I think the Eagles have, would honor that if that's the route that he wanted to go, because it is starting to get to a point where like sometimes less attention is good is good for the team. Instead of Jalen having to answer for his wide receiver every week. So that's my take on that. But I think outside of that, I would say the Eagles traded for cornerback Michael Carter II from the New York Jets. They traded John Mechie for him, and they traded a 7th round. They got a 7th round pick, and the Jets got our 6th round pick. So that trade happened to shore up our cornerback room that has been, up and down, has been getting a little bit better, but Adoree Jackson's been hurt. We're still working Jacorian Bennett back. Keely Ringo's had an up and down season. And Michael Carter has played exclusively as a slot corner this is his 6th season. In his 5 years, he's only allowed 3 total touchdowns, which I thought was an interesting stat. He was the highest paid slot corner at one point on a year-to-year basis. When he signed a big contract with the Jets, it hasn't worked out since he signed. He has had some injury trouble as well. But I believe the idea moving forward is that we have him in the slot and we move Cooper DeJean basically most of the time on the outside. I'm sure we can switch more variety back there, but that's kind of, I think, the Eagles' plan moving forward to kind of solve that cornerback 2 problem that we've been dealing with this year. So I think overall it's a good move. It's a move we kind of been hoping for. Maybe it's not that top level guy, and I don't know if there's moves to be made. We're getting guys coming back, and Brandon Graham has returned to this roster as well, unretired to join this team, which is really crazy. Especially after Zadarius Smith retired unexpectedly, and we started, Azeez Ojulari got hurt. Like, guys were getting hurt, and we were down to like 4 dudes going into the Giants game, and so it felt like that was a real talking point going into the game, was that the Eagles edge rusher was going to be able to do enough. So we'll have Nolan Smith and Brandon Graham. So it's like, do we really need to trade for a top tier edge rusher financially if that doesn't make any sense? I don't think that's going to happen unless it's for the right price. So I like the Michael Carter move. I feel good about the defense coming out of the bye, especially Nakobe's gotten a few games under his belt. We can mix and match. We have more variety. So I think those are a good couple moves so far. And Tank Bigsby, instead of being a kick returner, is a great running back. So now we have our running back 2 coming out of the bye week. And I think we've figured out a lot of things. So those would be my housekeeping notes for the Eagles.
No, I love it. So I'm going to get your final thoughts on the Eagles here. And then I want to talk about this Niners team because they play a very familiar opponent in the New York Giants, right? So final thoughts on the Eagles.
I'm really, really happy where we're at. 6-2, top of the conference, basically. The Packers have that weird, we have more wins, but less losses, but more losses type things. So we'll see what the record's going to be, but it's basically going to be a battle for the 1 seed these next few weeks. We're going to learn a lot about this Eagles team, and we're going to come back healthier. And, it'll be exciting to see what tricks we have up our sleeve coming out of the bye. It gives us an advantage against the Packers having a little bit more rest. And it's on a Monday night too, so we get an extra day on that bye too. This is going to be a big stretch. We're looking great in the NFC East with unfortunate injury circumstances to the other teams, and then the Cowboys just sucking. But I think that it's been we're in a great spot. So don't mess it up, guys. There's the NFC East is within your control, and if you do that, you get a top 4 seed. That's a guaranteed playoff game. The next 2 weeks are going to decide the 1 seed, in my opinion. They will decide how I feel about the Eagles' ability to get the 1 seed, because these are going to be the 2 teams I believe, we're going to be jostling for that 1 seed with the rest of the way. So I think that if we somehow win both of those back to back, I'm saying we're probably going to be the 1 seed to finish. But if we go split or go 0-2, the conversations get different, but it's still exciting. So that's what I'm really, really looking forward to for the Eagles. All right, so let's talk Niners. How you holding up, buddy?
I'm frustrated, but yeah, this Niners season has been wild, bro. Like I've genuinely have never seen an injury situation quite like what the 49ers have going on. And it's to the point where, like, before the 49ers made a trade, which I'll talk about here in a few minutes, we had 2 active edges going into this matchup against the Giants, and one of them ended up getting picked up by another team. So it's a wild situation, but I'm nervous. And I'm not nervous to play the Giants because the Giants are a banged up team too. The Giants are the Giants. This isn't like a make or break week for the 49ers by any stretch, but it's where they're playing that I'm really concerned about. They're playing in Metlife in New York, which is well known as probably the worst turf in the NFL. And it's, I've already seen some 49ers get banged up and have season-ending injuries there before. I'm nervous about this week, considering the luck or lack thereof the 49ers have had with the injury bug this season. So that's my initial thoughts on this. And that's, to kind of jump ahead a little bit, that's a key to the game, is get out of it healthy, because, this season the Niners are positioned well. They're well positioned. You're going to get back guys. You're getting Brandon Ayuk back at some point soon. You're getting Ricky Pearsall back at some point soon. You have other injuries to guys, recent injuries that they're not super long-term. Like, there is health to come. And I've been saying that for a bunch of weeks, and unfortunately we just can't get level ground. But if you can get ahead of that injury bug a little bit by having 1 or 2 healthy weeks, relatively healthy weeks, and you can get ahead of it, get some of these guys back, and you can stack a couple wins, you're going to be in position to make a playoff run. And expectations going into this season were just to try and grow this team, to try and, build this team up from the mass exodus that we experienced, right? And all these new faces, young and just kind of building that up. So now to be able to get that playoff experience that early is going to be huge. So let's talk about this Giants game. I'm going to throw it over to you because you know this team. You guys have played them twice. This Giants team is frisky. They're actually pretty fun to watch. They were a lot more fun when Cam Scadaboo was out there and actually healthy and playing. That was heartbreaking. And Kyle Shanahan was asked about, Scadaboo, and Shanny said, like, he was one of the guys we were really high on during the draft process. Like, we were definitely considering bringing him into the building. And if you remember, he was one of my guys that I had highlighted. So I love Scadaboo. I was heartbroken when he went down. I'm grateful to hear that the surgery went really well. But that was their Fred Warner. And I say that in the sense of that was the guy who held their team together this season. That was their fire, their fire guy, their guy who was just building a culture in a lot of ways for that New York team who lacked a lot of identity. So with that being said, yes, they're missing the physical presence of Scadaboo, but missing, I'm not going to necessarily say the leadership. It could be a leadership thing, but just missing the kind of intensity that he brings to that field is going to be a big hit for the Giants. And you saw that unfold quickly after he went down in that game, and things really shifted from there. So Marcos, let me know about this team a little bit. I know their defensive line is good. The run defense is awful. I mean, Saquon popping off last week. What do we need to look out for here?
Well, I do think for the Niners, if you want things to go your way, the first point that you already made is their defensive line. They're going to be that New York Giants defensive line is going to dictate the outcome of this game. I think it's that battle with your O-line that has been inconsistent is going to be very important. And Christian McCaffrey can still be used in a lot of ways. But where you guys can get them, even with your, batch of receivers, is their corners, because they are just as injured at that cornerback spot. And we got to see that firsthand last week. They were playing practice squad corners out there. So with your receivers, your veteran receivers, they should be able to handle this assignment, and Max should be able to get the ball out quickly if that's how they want to attack this pass rush, which is probably the best way to go. So that breathes some promise, because I believe Shanny will have something planned for that. But that defensive line can dictate it if things don't work well. But I think even if you guys don't execute well in the run, if they somehow, take advantage this week, I do think you guys will be able to get them through the air if it's through a quick pass game. On the defensive side of things, Jackson Dart's really the only guy right now on this offense that's a true creator. Darius Slayton, he is his number one guy, but the Eagles held him in check outside of that questionable call, right? But I think that Wan'Dale Robinson, can he get going? Their O-line has been shaky as well, but your D-line, you're just using tape at that point and young players, and it's gonna be tough. I think Saleh really should put an emphasis on pass rush discipline. Don't let Dart beat you. Don't let Dart beat you with his legs, because he will, if like a rookie quarterback likes to do, he'll put it, his eyes only stay up for so long before he decides to take off. So I think that Dart is capable of making plays with his legs, and I think his confidence comes from that. I think that he plays better overall. We saw that in the first Eagles game, is like when he was confident when he was getting through, breaking through, making plays. Out of structure, he's comfortable. So I think that if the Niners just force him to make throws from the pocket, he can do that, but he still has a lot of work to do. And I think that would be the best way to make use of the Giants on the defensive side. And I think Saleh is going to be have a game plan for him too. So that's kind of what I would think. We don't have to worry about you guys on special teams. You guys have been so good there this year. So I think that, if those two things happen, you guys have a really good chance with the Giants.
Well, our kicking unit got a lot better, but the defensive side of things and stopping run backs, that's a little questionable. But the point I want to build off is that defensive line and being having that disciplined pass rush. So Rob Saleh's got two new weapons, if you want to call them that, two new guys to work with this week, considering the injuries already to Nick Bosa. Now you've got Bryce Huff, who's probably not going to play this week. You've got Jordan Elliott, who's not going to play. D. Winters, he's dealing with stuff too. He's probably not going to play. Alfred Collins, right? So, I mean, Sam Okwano last week, he got carted off. All these guys are considered day to day, but it hasn't looked good this week. So we got 2 new guys this week, and I gotta say, Lynch kind of cooked. All right. So the first one came with the 49ers trading a 6th rounder for Keon White and a conditional 7th round pick. So that conditional 7th round pick, how that works, if anyone doesn't know, it's based on how many games Keon White is considered active for the 49ers. If he is active for 7 games a season, that 7th rounder goes back to New England. But if he's not active for 7 games at any point, that 7th rounder is the 49ers. So you can kind of weigh it here. It's like it's a game of chess or checkers, right? Like if John Lynch really likes that 7th round pick for any reason, or he just wants to have it in his back pocket, I mean, they could consider him not active for a couple of weeks, right? We'll see what kind of games are played here, and if that really happens or not. It's pretty frowned upon to do things like that. But a little bit on Keon White. He's young. He's a versatile at a defensive end. His utilization was the biggest issue in New England. And it was a similar situation to that of like Bryce Huff. You know, Bryce Huff comes over to the 49ers and he's making plays. Like he's looked damn good this season so far. And now, unfortunately, dealing with the injury, you got to start kind of looking other directions. And with Keon White, he's a former 2nd round pick. Like early on, he was making plays for the Patriots. Like he was looking good. Things were going well. He was considered top 10 in multiple different facets. Like he was impacting the game from a pass rush perspective in borderline elite ways. And then fast forward a little bit, even just to this year, and he's essentially fallen out of the rotation entirely. So you get this guy who has a lot to prove. He's young. He's going to be extremely useful for a guy like Rob Saleh, who, I mean, benefits greatly from guys who have an elite utilization package. I don't even think that Keon White has come close to touching his potential, like his ceiling. So that to me is exciting. And I think, you know, John Lynch really cooked with this one because he gives us a little bit of depth on the defensive line, and you didn't have to give up a lot for him. And depending on the active and so on, you could have technically gotten more for him. So I like that a lot. Now the Niners also signed Cleveland Farrell. Welcome back. It's been a couple of years. He was signed just the other day. He was great against the run a couple of years back. And I'm gonna ask people to go back a little bit to 3 years ago or 2 years ago. When we had him out there, great against the run defense. He got injured, was out a few weeks. Our run D didn't go down the drain, but it definitely took a hit, and it was a noticeable hit. So from a perspective of stopping the run, I think he's going to be really useful. And again, it's another guy that just helps with the depth that has severely been lacking now at that edge presence. So I really like those 2 additions. We'll see what kind of run times they get this week. I think you're likely to see Keon White a lot more, but could potentially see both of them a good deal. So definitely that pass rush is going to be a thing to keep an eye on this week in terms of how Saleh kind of shapes us up and game plans this. Another thing too, like great on Diamador Lenore getting that interception last week, ended that crazy streak of no interceptions for the 49ers. But I want to be honest, that secondary group, it's just not special. Like, they're not out there making elite plays. Diamador is a top 5 cornerback in the NFL right now. He hasn't allowed a single reception all season long on him. He has definitely taken that step, that leadership step. But the guys around him, like Malik Mustafa, hits really hard. But in the pass game, it's, you question if he's capable of doing that and holding that down and reading something properly right now. So again, a lot of young guys, right? Renardo Green's out there. You got so many guys that are just inexperienced in larger roles right now. And I think that's definitely a part of it, but it's not an elite group. So Rob's got to dial up a good scheme the rest of the season, let alone just this week, to really get this team to mesh defensively and figure something out. I mean, this team that we played last week against the Texans, this was a Texans offense that for all season long has struggled to move the football. They didn't struggle to move the football in any way, shape, or form against the 49ers last week. And again, you don't have a lot of your main guys out there defensively, and you had so many injuries already throughout that game. But nonetheless, the Texans looked like, CJ Stroud of 2 years ago and looked like a team that, could make a actual run through the playoffs. And that even this season has been questionable. So this is going to be, in my opinion, a good game for the 49ers just to kind of maybe get back on track. You're seeing the Giants who are dealing with a ton of injuries, like you said, to their secondary. They're dealing with now the injury to Cam Scatterbo. So this is a team who's banged up from a physical standpoint. They're banged up from a mental standpoint. This is an opportunity for the 49ers to get right. And I think that if the 49ers are able to put together a good enough game plan defensively, I don't think they're going to struggle offensively, because Christian McCaffrey has been the best running back throughout in the NFL this season. I'm not going to hesitate in saying that, because he has been a monster through the air. He's up there with wide receivers in terms of his receptions and yards, and he's now eating on the ground as well with the last 2 weeks. I mean, last week not so much, but the week before that, eating when George Kittle came back. This is the team you run the ball against. I mean, this is a Giants team who struggles to stop the run. Probably the worst in the NFL right now. So this is the get right week. I think if you don't take advantage of it, not the end of the world. Losing a game here, it's not the end of the world, because the season itself is just wild already. But to get a win would be huge in a lot of ways, just in the sense of, again, position yourselves. You have all these guys you're potentially getting back. You don't have a bye until like week 14, so you got time there. You just want to try and stack some momentum here as much as you can leading up to that point, because these practice windows for even Brandon Ayuk open up very soon here. I mean, we're week to week, and it could be next week at this point. And Ricky Pearsall is making his, run it and coming back here too. So Brock Purdy, does he play this week? Don't know. He looked good in practice. He looked like he was moving well from everything I saw. But Kyle kind of addressed it. He's like, this isn't black and white. This is absolutely something that we got to kind of address on a day-to-day basis. And it's one of those things. It's like, what I'm trying to get across to everybody I talk to is we have two quarterback ones. The 49ers have two QB ones right now. Both of them are banged up, but Mac Jones has held it down. And this is the benefit to having a guy like that, is you don't have to rush back a Brock Purdy or anybody for that matter when they're not necessarily ready to go. You did it against Jacksonville, and it set him back. So I'm hoping that was a learning lesson. I think it was, based on everything I'm seeing and how Shanny's and the team is kind of handling this situation. Don't be surprised if you see Mac Jones this week, and that's not going to be a bad thing, because Mac has been dealing. And I think this game plan offensively, you kind of highlighted it again. You got my team figured out. You want to get that ball out quick. That pass rush is the best thing that the Giants have at all on their team. And it's something that can definitely impact a game. They can get some strip sacks. They can get to your quarterback. They can make him feel pressure. They can make him make some mistakes. If you eliminate that entirely and get the ball out quick, if you can get your quarterback feeling comfy, just get some early completions and then lean on that run game to just make them stay true to it, this is going to be a pretty easy game. But again, you have to execute right. And the biggest key, guys, is you got to stay healthy. And this is, I'm lighting incense before the game, bro. Like, I'm doing rituals. I'm trying to do anything I can. I'm doing my part of things here, just trying to keep this team healthy from a fan point of view. Because, bro, it is wild right now. But I'm going to say my prediction, and I'm going to toss it over to you here. I got the 49ers going in to New York, getting a win. I got them staying fully healthy. Yes. And I got them winning 21-14.
Okay. I would say, actually, I was going to say 24-14 was going to be the score. I think the Niners, it's tough. Must be tough, I should say. Having to watch a depleted version of your team. And yes, you're still in the playoff race. You guys are in the 7th seed right now. If playoffs were today, we'd be facing each other round 1. But I think that the Niners are going to be able to compete for that 7th seed. And I think, like you said, there's going to be plenty of optimism if they can just hang on for just a few more weeks, stay within that picture, because you're going against a struggling Bears team, a struggling Cowboys team. The Commanders have a shot to get healthy, but those are going to be the teams that you're going to be jostling with, and you already have an advantage on those teams. So if you can just build that and hold off, extend that window a little bit then you get your reinforcements. Then you guys have just as good of a chance as anybody else, at least on the offensive side. You will be able to hang. So I just think that, especially a win like this, and it sucks that your bye week is week 14. I think that, this team needs rest now. They needed it, weeks ago. But I think, who knows? Maybe that leads to a refreshed, team going into the very end of the season, and maybe that elevates you guys in the playoffs. Who knows? But you guys are in a good spot. I think things have kind of fallen in the NFC. The powerhouses, the top teams are kind of the top teams. And I think the 7 that we're kind of seeing really are the 7 best teams in the NFC this year. And it's starting, the rest of the contenders from from the pretenders are really starting to separate themselves now. You guys have hung with the contenders without any of the main pieces that you've needed to be a contender. So I think that just shows what the Niners really have overcome this year. So I think that you guys are in a good spot. You got a great chance, like you said, to keep hanging in that division and keep winning and going 6-3 against the Giants. So I think you guys will be in a good spot.
Yeah, and this is it's a good game to win, because this game against the Rams after that, I know it's in Levi's, but it's going to be tough, because there's a Rams team who's found a little bit more momentum. They found ways to kind of disguise some of the holes that were otherwise open when you saw them the first time around. And now you're even more banged up. So, I think getting this game now, it just gives you even more of a cushion to, make that mistake of dropping that game. And after that, you see the Cardinals right after it. So 2 wonky divisional games, you never know how those are going to go. I'm going to end the Niners discussion by saying this. The trade deadline is just a few days away. I don't think the 49ers are done, but I don't think they're making a splash move. There's been this rumor of Trey Hendrickson. We've heard his name being dropped tons of times now. I really don't think that that's going to happen. I mean, number one, the Bengals aren't really shopping him necessarily. Sure, you're taking calls because you're a struggling team. You kind of want to hear what's going on. That whole situation is a mess in general. You're going to take calls. But it's going to take an arm and a leg to get him out of Cincinnati. And that's something that I think John Lynch and the organization kind of recognizes. It's we don't want to give up our future for a guy who's going to be a short-term rental. You look at how many injuries this team has. If all these guys were healthy, and I know that's asking something super unrealistic, right? Because it's football. This is injuries. But if all your guys were healthy, you're not needing to plug this many holes. You have holes, absolutely, but you don't need to make these massive splash moves like that. You just don't. You just need to go for depth at that point and fill some of the other holes that are lacking, especially that offensive line that hasn't been addressed for years on end, right? So it's tough to really evaluate what you need at a trade deadline when you have so many guys out and you're trying to weigh. It's do we make a run, or do we sit back, understand that we're going to get some of these guys back, whether this year or next year, and we don't want to jeopardize our future based on this guy. So I think the 49ers are making a move. Don't expect a splash move. I think you're going to see probably another edge rusher is my guess, because that's the biggest missing thing for this 49ers defense. And offensively, they've found found ways to win ball games, even on offense this season. So I don't think they're, hardened to go get a wide receiver. They're definitely not going to build that offensive line because that hasn't happened till now. So it's going to be the defensive end of things is my guess. And I think you're probably going to see another edge or a defensive tackle. So we'll see what happens, guys. But we got the Giants this week. It's going to be a Sunday morning game, which is nice for everybody because you get your game out of the way early. Then you get to sit back and enjoy football the rest of the day, right? So I'm looking forward to it. Like I said, I got the Niners by a touchdown. We'll see, baby.
Yes, sir. All right. Well said. This is going to end the NFL portion of the Behind the Back podcast. We will be right back because we're back to talking the Sacramento Kings together. There's a lot of things that we need to talk about, get off our chest on how we feel with our now 1-4 Sacramento Kings. So we'll be right back. All right, we are back on the Behind the Back podcast. If this is your first time listening to the Behind the Back podcast, thank you guys so much for joining and listening to what we've had to say so far. You can always give us a like, subscribe. We appreciate all the love and support. We just hit 200 subscribers, a big goal for us. Hope to grow with you guys each and every week. But Ben, this is a big portion of the podcast that we haven't gotten to do since the preseason was talk about our beloved Beam team, our Sacramento Kings, are now 1-4 Sacramento Kings as they just lost to the Chicago Bulls on the road. 2 tough losses. But before we even get into, all that, we didn't get a chance to talk about this team, how we felt. We talked about preseason, but a couple things have happened since the preseason, since we last spoke. So I'm going to toss it over to you. I'm going to let you break down what has happened here in these past few weeks. And then we're going to kind of just go over how we felt pre-tip-off. So what has been going on with our Sacramento Kings, Ben? Let everyone know, for those who aren't aware.
I think most are aware, but if you're not aware, the Kings extended Keegan Murray, gave him another contract. I think that's a big W. This is your lone wing on the team, and obviously his presence has been severely missed through his injury. But getting that deal done was huge. You get it out of the way. It's not something you have to worry about. So that was awesome. I love that move, extending Keegan Murray. You got him now long-term. The move after that was signing Russell Westbrook. And this is a hit or miss kind of thing right now. Look, I'm going to be honest. I'm a Russell Westbrook guy. Russ, you know this. I know you know this. You used to be a KD guy. You still are a KD guy. When those two were in OKC, those were our guys. And, I have always loved Russell Westbrook. I love the fire that he plays with. I love the kind of competitor that he is. Outside of the game, I think he's an awesome human being. So I was hyped about it. And, I was hyped about this team who has 2 of my favorite players of the past, basically century in Zach LaVine and Russell Westbrook. So I was happy with the Russ signing, but it wasn't the best move if you look at it from a roster construction standpoint. And that's the part where this whole conversation kind of opens up, because when have the Kings really ever been good at roster construction, right? And that's where, I get it. We're all frustrated because Scott Perry comes in. He has this vision that we're still trying to see exactly what it is. It takes time. He had one offseason to do it. Didn't even, get to do a ton. He tried to make the moves. He tried to shop certain guys. Didn't get a lot of hits on it. Couldn't do a lot. His hands were tied for X, Y, or Z reason or X, Y, or Z person. And so it's tough to build a roster from that standpoint. But Marcos, going in, I had it in my brain that this Kings team is just simply never going to commit to a full rebuild. You can have 4 young guys on your team, all within their, rookie contract or sophomore contracts. And past that, they're going to find ways to just scrape by. with these veterans, with these guys who are a little bit past their prime, searching for these contracts, have maybe a crappy contract already, or they've gotten a crappy contract from us and they're immovable at that point. And it's just a reality that we as Kings fans got to kind of face. So I had accepted it. I had accepted that I get to at least see Russell Westbrook and Zach LaVine, two of my favorite players. I'm hyped about it. Like, those two are fun to watch. And I'll leave it at this too. Like, Russell Westbrook, the biggest thing I was excited about, aside from him being my favorite, I don't think I've mentioned that enough. He brings an identity to your ball club. His identity is gritty. He's going to bring an intensity. He's going to bring that passion. And I think that's, really valuable to teams who are searching for that identity. And a Scott Perry-led organization now, or I guess it's Vivek Ranadive, unfortunately, this organization is searching for an identity. And from that standpoint, I thought it was a good signing. What did you think of it?
Okay, here we go. I think if you guys out there got to read mine and Ben's text messages since Russell Westbrook has joined this roster, I guess, to put it nicely, I probably would describe myself as kind of a wet blanket to his excitement for all this. Because I understand what you're trying to say. Like, I get it. Like, prime Russell Westbrook is one of my favorite players to watch as well. And I get it. Like, that's cool that we get to bring in a name. And it wasn't so much that it was Russell Westbrook specifically. It was the fact that this vision that Scott Perry had, we all knew. I think there wasn't anybody this year in the Kings fan base that really, if you asked the general Kings fan, the majority of Kings fans, I would say, I'm not going to speak for all of them, but I would say the majority of Kings fans felt as if the best that this team was really going to be able to do if things went our way was maybe make it to the top of the play-in, win a play-in game. But I think there was also the reality of, like, this is kind of a very similar team to last year, and we're going to face a lot of the same issues. And we're going to be bad because the rest of the NBA improved and we didn't. And so we add Dennis Schrader, pay him $15 million a year, and we're like, okay, we have our starting point guard. And now we throw in right before the season starts, training camp's over, 3 days before game one, we signed Russell Westbrook. And I remembered I was watching the preseason game with the Lakers, the last preseason game. And what made me excited for the season was I knew I was never going to see that lineup that was on there to finish the game. It was Devin Carter, Keon Ellis, Nick Clifford, Maxime Reynaud, and Isaac Jones. That's an entire lineup, an entire bench lineup that you could essentially commit to. Instead of being, if you were already going to be bad, why not be bad and develop? And you can have all your veteran starters be the starting five. And then have, we could still keep Malik and like maybe one of those guys, the rotation would be a little weird, but you would have a fair amount of minutes. And then all of a sudden I get told Russell Westbrook is entering the fray, taking away minutes from Keon Ellis and Devin Carter. More upset about Keon Ellis, I think the majority of Kings fans would be so far through this stretch. And I know they're figuring out minutes, but like all of a sudden we got older. We got a guy who can't shoot, even though his shooting numbers so far have suggested he's hanging in there compared to his career averages. But that won't last. It's Russell Westbrook. Unfortunately, it just won't last. I agree with I agree to an extent about the leadership status. We already have, 3 dudes on the roster, 4 dudes, Malik Monk, I'm considering a leader too, who are veteran players who have formed an identity. And now we're adding Dennis Schroeder, and then we add Russ. So it's just all of a sudden we're adding 6 veterans and forced to play them all. And we're undersized. And now the Keegan and Nick Clifford injuries matter in this context. Because I feel like after watching this team for the first 5 games, we're going to look better. when those guys get back. I think it's going to look a lot better, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Finishing plays, rebounding, those two guys are going to help. But where are they going to be the minutes for Neek, Keon, Devin, Malik? If we have to give, those minutes, about 20 minutes a game that he's averaging right now for Russell Westbrook. We already have guys that can do what Russell Westbrook can do, maybe not all by themselves, but collectively that's enough off the bench. We have what we need in the starting five, even though I disagree with the Schroeder signing too. But if we were going to do Russell Westbrook, like if we were going to do Schroeder and then sign Russ, why not just sign Russ for the vet minimum and save that money that we spent on Schroeder and get another player, a wing who could have fit on this roster? So that's where I disagree, because I believed in Carter. He was my guy when we drafted him. Obviously not Scott Perry's guy, but I believed in him for a reason. And I thought that, okay, we can lean into that a bit. And with Keon, and they look great when they're on the floor together defensively. That's why I'm excited for, when Clifford comes back, a lineup of Carter, Keon, Clifford, Keegan. With those four guys on the floor, this team's going to look awesome defensively. And then you can throw in Sabonis and whatever, or you could go small, kind of, if you wanted to with Keegan. I'm sure they're going to experiment with that a little bit. But we're undersized. We have old veteran guys who do nothing but complain. I'm sorry, when things don't go their way, they complain and they lose focus. Even though they're supposed to be the focused guys who don't let things rattle them, they get the most upset and rattled because they've been in the league for years. And they deserve more than the way they're being treated in Sacramento. But it's like, we forced this. They forced this on us. And for those who are like, there's huge Russell Westbrook fans, look at the numbers he puts up. We're better when he's off the floor and Keon Ellis is the guy. I'm sorry. It's cool to watch. Yeah, it's cool to watch 2 Russ air balls a game, guys. This is what I totally signed up for. He had 2 tonight. He had 1 yesterday. He had 1 yesterday against the Thunder with 2 minutes left in the game. That's not what I signed up for. So it's just, that's the frustrating part. It's being shoved down my throat, and I have to watch the players I want to play not play. And now they're trying to force them with Russ. And then when Keegan and Neek come back, I have no clue what this lineup's going to be. So that is how I feel about this team.
So let me ask you this then. I already kind of talked about it. I've accepted that this team is never going to fully commit to a rebuild. They're never going to fully commit to a young core. They're never going to do the proper things that it takes to be the first steps to a functional organization. I have accepted that. Why haven't you? And why are you? Your frustrations are so valid right now. Like, you're so valid in everything you're saying, and I agree fully. But the biggest thing for me is like, I've accepted that this team is just never going to commit to a rebuild. I've accepted that this, that, and the other thing. And so I'm happy seeing Zach LaVine put up 30 a night. I care that it's in a loss, but I love seeing him just be a bucket. I love seeing Russell Westbrook in a Kings jersey, because that to me is just electric in my opinion. Like, I have accepted the mediocrity that this franchise puts on the court on a yearly basis at this point. Why haven't you? And why did it take till now?
Because I don't believe in signing names just for names. Because the Kings in the past few years with Fox, when we had that core, there was real potential and a mix of veterans and young players. We had it all right there in the palm of our hands, and it didn't work. And we had the opportunity to make that change and just lean into the youth, have a crappy season, get a good draft pick in a loaded draft class. But instead we're going to waste development, and that just pisses me off. And the other years when things, like even last year with the whole Fox debacle and things like that, going into that year, I still think we had, and I think a lot of us thought we had the pieces still to compete and still be even more competitive. Now it doesn't feel that way. So it's hard when I know this year isn't going to be what I expect it to be, success-wise. I accept that. I know it's going to be bad. I thought this team was going to have 40-plus wins, but that was before Keegan Murray got hurt right before the season started, and we found out he was going to be missing the minimum the first 10 games. So I still thought there was something there because I believe in Zach. I believe in DeMar. Here's another thing. DeMar DeRozan, I think if he shouldn't be playing 38 minutes a game, he should really just be playing either the first 2 and the last 2 minutes of every quarter. And I think you would get the most of DeMar DeRozan because he can be a tone setter and he can be a quarter ender. And I love him at the end of quarters because he's proven to continue, he's still DeMar DeRozan in that aspect. But he's taken a step back. He's older and he looks older. So, and we're just throwing him out there for 40 minutes when we have guys who we can throw in there who we can do better. And I notice that in stretches, we look better when we don't have just a bunch of older non-defenders on the floor. And I hated the dialogue of like, oh yes, Russ brings this culture, but you're telling us all training camp, I've never seen these guys more locked in on defense. And I literally said this the last time we talked about it. Wait until 3 bad games happen and see how this defense looks. And OKC, they looked competitive. They looked good. That was a great game. But that's only because we are weirdly prepared to face teams like OKC and the Warriors because they are the same height as us. That's it. Every other team, we're facing a massive disadvantage. So we looked good against the Thunder, and I think if we had Keegan and Neek, it would have been even more competitive. I think we wouldn't have sold that game because we would have been able to hang defensively. But I think that man, it's just like we have the pieces to lean into to find paths for the future, but we're forcing Russell Westbrook on us when we already forced Dennis Schroeder on us. And so now you're just compounding minutes. And now we're hearing, media people speaking about the Kings saying, oh, the Kings think that Keon Ellis isn't a valuable asset. Like he could just be traded away when he's clearly our best player in terms of his production on the floor. He looks goofy, but he's our best defender and he's our best 3-point shooter at the moment outside of Zach, but like the most consistent, a true 3-and-D player that every championship team needs. And we're like, oh, he's expendable because Russell Westbrook, which is insane to me. So I will not accept that every time I'm watching Russell Westbrook play over one of these guys, I'm kind of hate watching him because I want him to fail so I don't have to see him. That's how I feel. And it sucks because I love Russ, but we don't need him to achieve the same goal that's going to happen regardless. He's not going to be the difference. He's not adding or costing us, which is frustrating. He's just here. And that's what's frustrating. That's what I can't accept.
So I was optimistic. I was very optimistic when this season started. And last time we talked about the Kings, we did our projections. Again, that was pre-injuries to Keegan Murray, pre-injuries to Neek. And, you had mentioned 42 wins. I had said 38. And then I said, I could see 40. But these injuries to Keegan, bro, just Keegan alone. I mean, yeah, and starting the season off with Domas injured, he didn't come out the gates hot. We're 5 games in now as of 40 minutes ago, having lost to a really bad Chicago Bulls team without Kobe White and more. You're 1-4. And, Doug hit the podium last night. This is Wednesday right now, we're recording. Last night against OKC. And I thought that was a great game. I thought they played fantastic through 42 minutes of that game. And then, look, OKC is a freaking championship team. That didn't change just because J-Dub and Chet are out. That doesn't change. They're still going to do that meme where you sit forward like the game just began. That's what they do. That's what championship and great teams do. So I'm not even mad at that collapse by any stretch necessarily. But, during that collapse, they're 1-10. 1-10 from the floor. They let the Thunder go on a 17-4 run. It was a horrendous 6 minutes a game. But Doug hits the podium and says, we could be a 4-0 team, but we're not ready to be a 4-0 team. And I think he kind of pinned it right there because it's and this is where my optimism shined up until today, is like the Kings had a chance to win every single one of these games at one point or another. They were up 20 on Phoenix on opening night. Obviously, you won the game against Utah, which was messy, but you got the win. The Lakers game, you had a chance to win. Questionable calls. I mean, I'm not even gonna start, but like Austin Reeves shooting more free throws than our entire freaking team. I'm sorry, FBI. Why don't you go investigate that? You want to investigate everything else. So you know they're in all these games, like they've given them a chance to win, and then you go into this game against the Bulls, and I texted you before the game, and I was like, they're gonna win this game by 20, because this team, they're pissed off about last night, like. They're fired up. They're ready to go. You know, it was announced shortly before the game that Keon was good to go. He was good to play. I thought they would come out with a little more fire. They started cold, figured it out pretty quickly after that. So they were down 12, and they tied it up. Then they took an 11-point lead before halftime. And then right before halftime, you see a minute 30-second collapse where they let the Bulls just put up 11 straight points, and, you know, they have a 2-point advantage going into halftime. And then from there, the Bulls just essentially controlled the game the rest of the way. And so this game to me, like, it's a back-to-back. It's your first back-to-back. It's coming off of a tough game in OKC where you played your hardest. I mean, Doug talks about winning the fight and winning the game. There's two different battles. You want to always win the fight. I think they won the fight in OKC. They didn't win the fight tonight against Chicago, and they definitely didn't win the game against Chicago, you know? So tonight was deflating because I had that optimism. I was hyped. I felt like, again, like my two favorite players, you know, this team full of vets, I felt like would really kind of find a way to mesh. And again, we're 5 games in, they could. Things could look a lot different when you get, you know, when you get Neek back and you get Keegan back, especially Keegan. But right now it sucks, and November doesn't get easier, bro. Like, our November schedule is horrendous. Dude, we see almost all playoff teams except for, like, the Jazz, the Suns, and the Hawks. And you've got to dance with the Spurs, you know, in there as well. And the Spurs right now are 4-0. So this is a tough stretch, and you know, you're going into it with little to no momentum, and it's worrisome. It makes me think, like, you know, again, I had that optimism. Now I'm like, do you almost hope that they crash out entirely and, like, burn out, lose a whole bunch of games, and Doug in this front office say it's a fire sale come the trade deadline? Like, everything's out there. We're listening to everything. Obviously, you hold on to Keegan Murray. You know, you're still going to hold on to Domas and Zach because those are removable contracts. But, you know, do you try and move some of these other pieces? And then I get stuck because it's like they kind of tried to do that this offseason. And that's why I'm, like, kind of at the point where I'm just kind of accepted this is going to be this team for the next, like, few years. It's like, it's going to be just competitive enough to keep ball games fun, but they don't have that it factor. They don't have, like, the next step. You know, Mike Brown, I hate to bring him up, but he always talked about that step from going from good to great. It's harder to go from good to great than it is to go from bad to good. This team is good. I will say that they're good. I do believe that. I think they're dealing with injuries right now that are huge, and I think that they've run into some unfortunate situations. But they're not a great team, and they see a lot of great teams early now. Like, this season has potential to get out of hand pretty quick. I would hope at that point that this front office wants to shift focus. And that's the only way to kind of save this season, in my opinion, is by saying, yep, blow it up as best we can, invest in youth, try to get a draft pick. Like, you have your draft pick going into next year. Keep it. Please don't trade your draft pick, your first round pick, please. Like, that's kind of where I'm at. Like, I I love the Kings. I've been a Kings fan since as long as I can remember, thanks to my father. In a lot of ways, he gave me this disease of being a Kings fan, so I appreciate you, Pops. But I'm always going to support this team. It's hard right now to get fired up for a King team.
So when we talk about the Thunder game, I had a lot of fun watching that one. Where it fell apart was the second we took Keon Ellis out of the game, and it was Russell Westbrook. But I even think it wasn't Russell Westbrook specifically. It was the fact that we had Russell and Dennis, who Dennis has been a negative for this team, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I think that if you had finished that game with Keon Ellis and Russ, I think the outcome would have been different because SGA was in a blanket all game when Keon was on him. Even Russ had some good reps on him too. So it frustrates me that you have all these veterans and I'm forced to watch them. And then you're put in these spots where some veteran experience, obviously a championship team's a different story, but like this veteran experience, you would think would be able to lock in enough and make it not collapse, hang on. And it's just, and we see this multiple times. Same for these runs should not be happening with all these vets when you have two veterans in at every stage of the game. And that's where it's like, if this is how it's going to be with the veterans, then screw it. Give me the young guys and let them. I'd rather watch the bumps in the road from the young guys instead of the old guys just selling the game. And we saw Domas play horribly last night, gave away multiple opportunities. He got screwed on a couple calls that, they weren't calling both ways. But I thought overall the reffing on SGA specifically was very unlike what, as people like to assume SGA a free throw merchant. He was not getting his calls against Keon Ellis and against Russ. I thought they played good defense on him. But the second you threw anyone else on him, he was doing what he wanted to do. And I think, obviously, again, if we had Neek and Keegan to throw at them, it might look a little different. I don't know how I feel bad for Doug because he's going to be the scapegoat because we can still trade away, whoever makes sense if possible. I think some teams will deal with more injuries and might become desperate for one of our guys to fill in a spot temporarily. And maybe that helps us out in the long run. But I think that I feel bad for Doug because he wants to play this style that requires more energy than these guys are willing to give. And you have guys who can give that energy for you. Maybe not, but how can they grow the skill without more reps? And if Devin Carter is just going to sit there on the bench, which I will admit he's been getting more minutes, but those first 3 games, he's just sitting there. How is he getting better? How are the guys, he's a first round pick you invested in. How is he getting better by sitting on the bench? How is Keon affecting the game by sitting on the bench when I have to watch Russell Westbrook airball shots and Dennis Schroeder be inconsistent? And Domas, who we paid $200 million to, craps the bed a little bit. He needs to be how he was tonight. His numbers were much more Domas. And that's what we need. We don't need him to be the all-star, even though we paid him $200 million to be that. We need him to be Mr. Consistency. That's what he's been during his tenure here. Let everyone else do, he can do his job and everyone else can pop off with him. So I just think that he needs to be better. The veterans need to really lock in, and you're already seeing the signs of them not buying in for Doug. And it's hard because they say they want to and they try. I'm not saying they're not trying, but it's not the right mesh. And Doug can only do so much.
I think Doug's the perfect coach for a young team. And that's that's what sucks. Because, we have that young team. They just don't want to go that direction right now. So it's you have all these pieces that individually, in a different scenario, would look really good. Doug Christie included. In a young team, you get these guys fired up to play some defense. You get these guys fired up to at the very least, 82 games out of the year, you're going to win the fight, right? I don't think that this is the right team for Doug. And I'm with you. I think I'm nervous that he'll be the scapegoat. I don't think he gets fired right now or this season. I don't think there's a scenario per se. I mean, I say that, but Mike Brown got fired right after we extended him, right? So, I guess anything's possible, but let me ask you this one last question. Is there anything that this Kings team could do right now by keeping the same lineup and winning a whole bunch of games? Yeah, this is the question, actually. If the Kings keep doing what they're doing, you get Keegan back, you get Neek back, the Kings find a way to pull some wins through, and they position themselves in the top 7. Yeah, 7 and up. So 7 is being the top end of the play-in. Somewhere in the top 7. Would you still be happy with the result being a playoff, like a first? If we make the playoffs, let me ask this question. This is the question. If we make the playoffs, are you happy with this team?
Yes. Well, yeah, because like that would exceed my expectations. It'd be fun to get playoff basketball, even if it is with this particular crew. Because that would imply that they figured something out to compete, hang, and compete in a tough Western Conference. That would be surprising to me, given how this roster is constructed and how I feel about the guys that they have. If they ended up pulling off a playoff run, that'd be insane. Even if they got like just getting in the play-in would be surprising to me at this point.
So then what do you value more here? Do you value building young guys up right now or gunning for a playoff spot?
I think we have the horses to do both. That's what's pissing me off. We have young guys that we can develop that can impact the game enough to get us to the playoffs with the mix of veterans that we have. And that's what bugs me. Like Devin Carter showed us flashes last year where he impacted the game in crucial moments that elevated this team to a win. Keon Ellis has shown it time and time again. We have Neek Clifford, they started him game 1. Even I know Keegan was out, but they felt confident enough in Neek Clifford to start him. So that is a very promising sign for when he comes back. He's probably 7th man, because they'll run Malik 6th man when he comes back. They won't start Neek if Keegan's healthy. But Neek's probably coming back first, so we might see that. Yeah, I don't know. So we'll see. But then that's where it gets a little dicey because that's where I wonder what this team's going to look like once Neek and Keegan come back, because where are the minutes for Devin and Keon, and how much is Russ going to get with Malik too? So you have 4 guys who can all play the same position, and that just makes it tough. So I think we'll see games where it's veteran, where it's more veterans, and then one game where it's a back-to-back. Maybe we need the young guys this game, so we'll see more of that. Maybe that's just what it takes. Maybe that's what it's going to be. If I had to pick, I'd prioritize the young guys, but the way the Kings decided to do this, sure, they gave themselves pieces to, like Russell Westbrook can be traded away. Dennis could technically be traded away, but it's just the optics that look terrible. But I mean, at the same time, it's like you have those pieces. Like it's not like this is it, but I'm going to see a lot more games where Russell Westbrook's going to be the closer when it probably isn't the right decision for him to be the closer and to give that to Keon or to even Malik, whoever has the hot hand. But I just think it's going to be that balance that I'm not excited to see, that I don't want to see. I wish that we didn't put ourselves in this position, but this is what it is. Like you said, like I'm not going to accept it while I'm watching it. I'm still going to this will be the chance to see if I'm right or wrong. I hope that I'm wrong and they win games. That's what I want ultimately. Like if Russ hits a game winner or just starts peeling off insane games, awesome, great. But it's just like that's not what I expect out of year 18 Russ. He's just here to be here, and that's what bugs me because we have an entire bench squad of guys that we could just throw out there and help them develop. And I feel bad for Doug because I don't think it's favoring him at all. So let me ask you, because we have this insane stretch. Right now we're 1-4 through the first 5. So let's talk about the next 15 games, because this will be like this version of the Kings, and then Keegan will probably be ramped up by that point after game 20, so we can talk about what it looks like healthy then. But if I had to put a record, we'd be lucky to win 5 games. I would put the optimistic be 5 and what? So no, it'd be 5-15 by game 20. Like, and that wouldn't be surprising. It would be more surprising if we had 10 wins. Even if we were a 500 team, I'd be surprised. Wow, that sounds terrible to say. That's just I don't see a lot of wins on there with the way the team has been playing. Maybe in the next 5 or so games they figure something out, look even more competitive, but we're undersized and undermanned every single game we go into, and that makes it hard. Unless other teams start getting hurt around us and leveling the playing field. We kept OKC on the ropes, but they were without their two of their starting, their big 3. So like, and they did what they wanted with us at the end. So it's just like, I don't know, man. I don't know if we can hang. And if that's the point, then just give me the young guys. That's what I want. But this is what it is. I would have us, let's say if I had to make a prediction for the first 20 games, I'm going to be optimistic. I'm going to say 6-14. Optimistic 6-14.
That's optimistic. That's wild. Yeah, dude, I'm looking at this freaking stretch. I mean, real quickly, you see the Bucks, the Nuggets, the Warriors, the Thunder, the Timberwolves, the Nuggets, the Hawks. Okay. The Timberwolves, the Spurs, the Thunder, the Grizzlies, the Nuggets, the Timberwolves, the Suns. Okay. And then the Jazz. Okay. All right. And then the Grizzlies, and then the Rockets. So that wraps up November. Oh my God. This is going to be messy, dude. This team just isn't. Like, this team has to mesh yesterday for this team to have a shot in November. And that's going to be the difficult part here. Like, it's hard to see a scenario play out where, like, they lose tonight against one of what was considered the worst teams, not just in the NBA, but in a weaker Eastern Conference. They lose this game, essentially get tossed around at the end. And then you just come out of it and go, yep, we got this. Like, we're going to lock in and we're going to be all these contending playoff teams in the month of November. Like, 6 wins, that might actually be optimistic. Like, I think I see 3 wins. And I'm like, and again, like, I'm not super upset about it because, again, I've kind of accepted that this is how the Kings are going to be. This organization, this franchise just will not buy in to the idea of a full rebuild. And to be honest with you, I think a positive might be they need to have a season where they genuinely didn't buy in and don't even get close to a play-in spot. Do you feel me? Like, that might be the straw that breaks the camel's back, in the sense of, like, we've gunned for essentially a play-in spot now for 5 years. You did it again. You ran it with a whole bunch of vets who should pull you the distance in an extremely competitive Western Conference. And you didn't even scratch the play-in. Time to blow it up. I don't know. I might be hoping for it.
I have one more question for you, and then we can table this conversation for the next stretch of games we got here. Because we watched last year, we watched this offseason as the team that beat us in the play-in, that advanced in the play-in, the Dallas Mavericks, ended up with the number 1 overall pick somehow. And the teams in the top 3, I forget if like none of them or only one of them had stayed in the top 3, right? So with the way the NBA lottery is, we could suck and it wouldn't matter. We could suck and we could have the worst record in the league and still end up with the 7th pick. What if we suck, which we're playing? It's already looking that way, right? What if we do just have this horrific season, have like one of the worst records out there, and we don't walk away with a top 3 pick? How would you feel? I know this draft class is loaded, but like, in the rare opportunity for us to not grab a mediocre name, how would that feel if we ended up out? Let's just put like outside the top 3.
I mean, that's That's a huge deal at that point. You know, you've essentially wasted a season. And that's really what it comes down to. You know, there's ways to waste seasons in the NBA. I think a wasted season is kind of what the Kings are doing right now. You're throwing a whole bunch of old spaghetti noodles at the wall to see which ones stick, and you're hoping that it works. That's one way to waste a season. Another way is doing what some of the worst teams in the NBA did last season, the Utah Jazz, who were positioned extremely well to land the number 1 overall pick and didn't. Like, that's a reality of the lottery in the NBA. It's a reality of kind of keeping things so that teams can't do that. I don't like it, but in a way, dude, like, I'd almost be more nervous if the Kings had the number 1 pick, because I don't trust that Scott would have the reins to make the right pick. Like, I genuinely don't. I feel like Vivek Ranadive would once again have his guy kind of tied up in the decision that he can make, and we wouldn't be able to land the guy that makes the most sense for our team. Like, that's what terrifies me, is regardless of what happens, whether it be a play-in, a playoff, number 1 pick, I'm so nervous. It all boils down to this organization and the leadership. I'm so nervous moving forward with this ownership group, because this ownership group is not good.
That's where I would agree with you, because my next question would be like, what if we got the number 2 pick again? And like that would be the craziest, spot to be in, especially with another big man in Duke potentially coming out of Duke being the 2nd overall pick again. But if we were the 1st overall pick, I think we would pick AJ, so long as everyone was healthy and no major injuries. We'll see. But like, he seemed like, just for what we would need, it just seems so obvious, right? But it would be disappointing, because again, like what we saw with the Mavericks and other teams, if you're competitive, if you compete, it almost feels like you're going to be rewarded. It feels like they got rewarded for trading Luka. That's what that feels like. But it showed that the possibility exists that if you just give it your all and are competitive, that you can get the number 1 overall pick. You can get a top 3 pick. So why not give it everything you have? So I get that part of the argument for like, okay, well, if you're saying that, then do the best players on the floor, and those could be your vets. And I was like, well, my argument here is, what if the vets aren't the best player on the floor for the Sacramento Kings? So that's where we run into that issue, is like, maybe we're just lying to ourselves because we're letting the contract speak for the playing time, which is what it is. DeMar doesn't have to play 40 minutes. He'd be more effective in like 25. Like that's. And Levine was probably, I want more of him because he is our most effective scorer. DeMar should be that guy in the last 2 minutes or in the first 2 minutes, just to stabilize the team early, get a few buckets, straighten things out, and then he just comes in and kills it, finishes the end. That's not going to happen. That would be insane. DeMar would rather retire than come off the bench, unless he's, that's how I feel. I think that's the spot he's in. But it's gonna be an interesting ride in these next few weeks, and maybe we'll be wrong. Maybe once Keegan and Keon and Neek come back, all of a sudden Doug gets the roster that he wants, and it looks better, even with more vets, because at least Keegan and Neek will be there. So like, it'll be interesting. But I hope that these guys come back healthy. That is the number 1 thing that we need, is for them to come back and stay healthy. Maybe that's why Domas is struggling a little bit. Maybe he's getting used to coming back from the hamstring. He missed a whole week. So it's like, maybe that's part of the reason for his slow start, because I'm not going to lie to you, buddy. You need to play a little bit better. I'm sorry, Domas. We're paying you $200 million. You need to play better. Like, I'm sorry. So like, you can't do this when everyone's been calling. Now I kind of wanted to take a little disrespect off of Zach LaVine, who has been our most efficient player from a scoring perspective, and all this talk that his contract is the worst on this team. That no longer is the case if Domas continues to not play well. he will be the worst contract. If not, there's an argument for him. I saw like Bill Simmons saying, "Oh, is Keegan Murray the worst contract?" And I thought that was really disrespectful. Um, I know what he got relative to his peers. That there was some savings around the league at guys in his draft class, but like fourth overall pick who's done everything that we've asked him to. I just think that like Domas we're paying top 10 money to, and he's not a top 10 player. So it's just one of those things that if you don't stay Mr. Consistent, we're going to keep talking about you this way. And we're stuck because no one's going to want to take on a player who isn't necessarily tailor-made for this version of the league. So that's just kind of where I'm at with this team. And I hope that, I hope these next four we can, get at least one more win and talk about a 2-8 team when we come back. But it's just, this is what this season's going to be like. But if that does happen, play the young guys and don't fire Doug. I like what Doug's doing. I think that Doug has the chops to be a good coach. Give him the players that fit his system. And that was the thing that disappointed me. It felt like we just settled for players who weren't in his system but were names. And Doug will figure it out. That's just unfair. So I hope that he lives to see this year in terms of the not get fired. That's a weird way to phrase things, but I hope that he doesn't get fired this year. He survives the chaos and maybe can find something with young guys that rallies his team. That'll be my final statement on the Kings right now.
My final statement is like, I've been a lifetime fan. I'm not gonna stop. I'm just upset because like we've been at this state for so long where it's like we need to finally just commit to a full rebuild. And I've just, like I said, I've just kind of accepted that it might not ever happen with this ownership group. Nonetheless, I'm pulling for this team every single day. Like, love this team to death, but I am freaking upset with the state of this team and the way that it has just been managed in the past, really just the last 2 years, year and a half. It just hasn't been. You had it going. You just needed a freaking wing. And then you keep all your guys. So I love this team. Marcos loves this team. BTB, we love this team. It's not that we don't like this team. It's just right now it's frustrating to be a Kings fan. I know everybody can relate to that. So we're gonna continue talking about this team all season long. And yeah, I'm with you, bro. Like, I hope that this team kind of figures something out, because it's gonna be a long season otherwise. Like, and then you question where it goes from there. So we'll see if the vets can pull something off here. November's gonna get crazy, but we're always gonna be here to talk about it.
That's right. And for you Russell Westbrook fans like Ben over here, who are happy to see him in a Kings jersey, that's fine. Accept it, be happy, enjoy it. That's fine. And, for us who don't enjoy this and want the younger guys, stick with it. It's going to happen. It's just, I know it's disappointing that it's going to happen later than we want it to. But yeah, we'll see what happens here. This is going to be a season where, we already figured it was going to end up being something like this. Like, the expectations were lowered, like as a collective. It wasn't, Sacramento fans weren't kidding themselves. So that's what makes this frustrating, is like we knew we were going to be bad, but this isn't the kind of bad I was wanting. I was wanting to be a different kind of bad.
The funny part was that, like, I hate to do this, but like DeMar was going into the season. All these guys are going into the season, and they're like, we hate the way that we're being talked about right now. Like, we're low on the power rankings. Like, we're low on everything. And Kyle Draper, I love Kyle Draper. He went on the Drive Guys pod at the today, and he was like, I hate the negativity around Sacramento right now. Like, these fans, it's all negative. And I'm like, bro, this is just kind of what this team has done to themselves. Like, Drapes, I know you got here 6 or 8 years ago, but like, dude, it's been like this for a while now. Like, the negativity stems from being so mediocre for so long.
Absolutely. And that's what we're going to live this year, is going to be the mediocre. And there is a beauty in that. There is a growth in that. It's just a matter of, we just have no clue There's a million ways that they can take it, and I think that something unexpected is going to happen injury wise around the league, and it's going to open up an opportunity. And I think that's how the Kings pivot. But we won't know for sure until the dominoes fall, and that's it's kind of the hard part about the NBA. It's been weird. The NBA is rigging games and stuff. There's a whole new era of the NBA that we're living in right now. They're in some crazy times. So with the Kings, we're gonna ride or die here. We're gonna suffer with them. And I mean, the games are entertaining. They're always fun until they're not, and we inevitably choke it away. But we'll see what happens as the year goes on. But we will, like Ben said, we will stick with it, and come back and update you guys as the season goes on. And we got NBA Cup action coming up. That's always going to be fun, and it's been great the past couple of years. We will see if we, maybe get a look at the Kings court. Hopefully, it's cool this year. I saw a couple of them. Not excited. I think the Timberwolves had this green one that I was like, bro, that's not good at all. So I'm not excited to see all the courts, but some of the NBA Cup courts are going to be cool this year, guys. So with that being said, I think we're going to end it right here. I think this is we needed timed event. It's been a couple weeks, so we appreciate you guys sticking with us on a longer pod. Miss having these hour-and-a-half long ones like we used to here. But with that being said, guys, this is episode 108 of the Behind the Back podcast. You can hit us up at behindthebackpod13@gmail.com. For all you guys watching on YouTube, all the socials, the links to our socials are up above. For all you audio listeners out there, the links to the descriptions are down below. Please give us a like, subscribe, rate, review, and follow the show. Guys, we appreciate all the love and support that we have gotten. We're enjoying the growth that we've received and the growing community that we have. So for all you Kings fans who need a safe space, I know we said a lot of negative things, but this is out of love, and we're still here for the ride. So you have a safe space to tune into and offer your takes. For you Niners fans, power through. You guys still have a very good chance. The season's so far from over. We're only halfway done officially. For you Eagles fans, I know we're sitting comfy. Enjoy this bye week. So I'm Marcos Conan. Beside me here, as always, is
Ben the Jarrett.
All right, y'all. We love y'all. We will talk to you next week.
Peace.